I am Elizabeth Rose from L&M Medilaw. I am joined today by the founders of solicitors group Disabling Barriers Scotland, Tom McGovern and Fraser Mackay. Would you like to tell the viewers a bit more about your background and the organisation you've set up?
We're both trainees, albeit we work in different areas. So my name's Thomas McGovern. I work in criminal defence. I'm based in Wishaw, Glasgow, Hamilton, kind of all the big cities in Europe. And I've been a trainee for, it feels like 10 years, but it's been about 18 months. And I'm dyslexic. So I had extreme difficulty in school and particularly university. And then when I started the profession quite early on, I was using my phone in court for a criminal case. And the sheriff called me unprofessional for using my phone, but I was using it because I can't read my own handwriting at times. Okay. And since then, I wrote an article for the Journal. I was on the BBC. I was interviewed by a few newspapers. And then Fraser was working behind the scenes, so I was speaking to the Law Society about what I could do to promote disability, and Fraser was working on his own independently. Strange enough, the two of us being trainees, and then the two of us got together and just wanted to start a group, just trying to kind of promote diversity and actually try and a voice of people that didn't really get the opportunity at university to talk with, you know.
So you didn't know each other, so you weren't friends at all, so it was just serendipity that you came together on this project?
We're still not friends. Oh. I've made that, just trying to get closer over that. I've made that a very kind of big thing that is purely professional, but we didn't know each other at all. And I went through to Dundee to see Fraser, and we got a wee kind of, was it a soup or was it a coffee? I think, was it both?
Yeah, I think it was a coffee and a cake.
Aye, and the rest is history.
We were connected through Rob at the Law Society, like Tom was saying. We both put in separate articles around the same time.
Okay.
And Rob and I had initial discussions about how in need is a peer support group for lawyers with disabilities in the legal profession in Scotland, and we had an initial discussion to see if it was something that would be worthwhile doing. And I'd started working on a database of initial volunteers to get that off the ground. And at that point, Tom approached me and I saw his article, and yeah, we came together to launch it in December last year.
And how's it been going so far? What's the response been like?
It's been amazing so far. So we set up in December and we weren't too sure, because there is a bit of a fear of disclosure when it comes to disability, how forthcoming people would be about their health conditions. It is quite a sensitive topic. So we do realise that we're trying to change the conversation from a fear of disclosure to being an open conversation. And since we launched in December, we're now at 100 members in our database and 150 followers on LinkedIn. So it's growing really quickly, which is really positive.
And all your members have to have a declared disability to join, or do allies join as well?
We set it up so that both supporters and members can join. The only difference being that members are those with disabilities and supporters are those that want to support the legal profession to become inclusive to those with disabilities. So we wanted to open it up to both so that we could gain the benefit of the entire legal profession in creating a community that's welcoming for all. So we're very much open to those that don't have a health condition, but we wanted the group to be beneficial for those that did.
I think because I think this is the first time this sort of groups kind of came about, and I think that's because people in general are kind of being more open and inclusive in their attitude, that people, even if they don't have a declared disability, or even if they themselves don't kind of feel there's barriers in the workplace, they still are actually quite interested in the fact that people are being so open about it. I mean, the thing for me is that I kind of imposter syndrome. Even we done a first Zoom meeting back in November, about 20 to 30 folk, and the two of us have been trainees, but there was people from, like, there's a guy who works in Google down south or something like that, and there's partners in big corporate firms who are part of our group as well. So that's taken me back, that the fact that there's people so willing to engage who are at a much senior level than ourselves are just now.
There obviously was a need for the group. The fact that you're able to garner such support so quickly, there obviously was this gap that needed to be filled, an organisation supporting disabled lawyers.
Yeah, definitely, Elizabeth. It's not a new idea though. England are already they have aspiring solicitors, so they already have a really successful group doing what we're aiming and progressing to do. They have the Law Society's Disability Access Scheme.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not new concepts. We're just trying to get the legal profession in Scotland up to speed. And when we were looking to do it, as you were saying, we were quite surprised that it hadn't been started before. But
Mm-hmm.
the main thing that's come about for it so far is, as Tom's saying, there's people that are partners in legal firms that are coming forth with their disability and saying, I'm dyslexic and I'm able to work in the legal profession and have such a successful career. And when I was in university, my background is that I have dyspraxia, and I
Mm-hmm.
was diagnosed at 11. And when I was at university, I, similarly to Tom, found it quite a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at the legal profession as a possibility of something that I may want to go into. But having the questions about do I disclose my disability? Is the legal profession for me? Can I do it? Can I have a successful career if I disclose my disability? And those were all questions that I was asking. And I was really looking for support. So I was a member of Aspiring Solicitors and was able to gain their support, but it was not Scotland based. So I still had reservations about the Scottish legal profession. But since we started it, having the people that are much higher up in their careers saying, I'm doing it too, I'm having a successful career, has been very positive and motivating.
And how did you find the kind of recruitment process? Did you declare at recruitment stage, or was it once you had your training contract you disclosed?
I disclosed during the recruitment process and had reasonable adjustments. I think I had a bit more extra time during one of the assessments in the assessment part. And I realized that I wanted to be part of a profession that I could feel confident in disclosing my disability. It's a legal right, a reasonable adjustment. So I wanted to recognize that and to change the conversation to create more confidence in being able to disclose, because it is a scary thing thinking that if you disclose a disability, you're going to be held back from career progression. And thankfully, I've not found that so far, but I'm still at the early stages of my career.
There's also the kind of double-edged sword that it is private medical information and it's how much you disclose, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people may also not identify as having a disability, and that's why we wanted to make the group a self-declaration scheme, so that people with such conditions such as chronic pain or mental health concerns can also gain our support. And we're starting to work with Lockyer to be able to deliver or signpost the people that fall into that category to the right resources to get them support.
I saw that you were also...
I do it in open court.
And how was that? And I read that. How did that go?
It was really embarrassing. I never went into with intention of disclosing it. My brother is the partner of my firm, so that kind of. I don't think he's actually been polite enough to ever ask if I've got dyslexia, so it's never really came up. But I think that's given me a lot more protection, to be frank with you, going into the profession I didn't have at university. But I was just a sheriff at Hamilton he's all right, the guy, but it was sometimes, and this has came on a few of our meetings, they speak with they're very, very forward and very kind of brisk and quite rude at times. And see, when the problem is that when you actually do have, I do have dyslexia, that's why I'm doing this. I'm not trying to be cheeky, I'm not trying to be unprofessional. Then that's when it is a problem and why attitudes do need to change, and that's what the group's about, you know.
And that was about your comment about the 4G, that you needed to have access to the 4G so that you could access your phone and your tablet, etc.
No, that's a separate issue, which is...
Was that a separate issue?
Consumed my life, and this is my platform to talk about for another minute. See,
okay.
in Glasgow Court, everybody at Glasgow Sheriff Court, there's no mobile data in the basement. About a third of the cases call in the basement. I use an iPad for my filing system because my handwriting, as explained, is terrible. I cannot access my files down the stairs. It is very problematic. Sheriffs have chewed me out of it before. I've not said in court why I use my iPad yet in Glasgow, but it's something that quickly needs rectified because it's completely irreconcilable with a modern day legal system to not have the facilities of mobile data in a court that busy.
And does the Wi-Fi not?
So the Wi-Fi there is Wi-Fi available, but it's password protected. Only certain people have access to it, and the amount of memory the Wi-Fi has and the amount of megabytes, it's not sufficient for a whole filing system and a kind of cloud server system we use for all our files and PDFs.
Okay.
It's like, like the Wi-Fi you get in ScotRail or something like that, where you can sometimes
right.
email,
Okay, so you can't.
Except it's like the busiest court in Europe.
I can tell that's a big bugbear.
I don't know. It's like having a child or something like that now. Or a pet, because it's actually consumed. And I try and find avenues to talk about it and people to listen. But I'm not going to shut up about it until they change it. It's such a big issue, and it sounds. I don't know how big it sounds if you're not in criminal, but it wreaks havoc,
No, I can completely understand that, particularly the problems with, handwriting, being able to access your files. It seems reasonable you should be able to do so in a court which is exercising a public function.
Exactly, But I think even people without disability, I think it's an issue for them as well. But now if you do have something that you need an impairment, that it's a necessity,
Well, that's the kind of thing that I'm always banging the drum, that accessibility is good for everyone. It benefits both disabled people and non-disabled people. And we should all be striving to an accessible legal service because in general, it will assist. If you can write in plain English, if you can use a bigger font, if you can use, avoid visual crowding, there's lots of things you can do to make things easier, and it's easier for everyone, not just. I think it's perceived as a tiny minority of people, which I actually think is a fallacy as well. Most people in their lifetime will at some point be deemed disabled. And we have an ageing profession. I don't know what the current retirement age is. It's not 67 now. So you're unlikely to get to 67.
Well, in criminal law, the retirement age is actually 103. But I think what you're saying is absolutely true. But there's also a spectrum of. So I think my dyslexia, to be frank with you, is milder than other people's, but you also have people with different abilities, whether disabled or not, who need access to the best facilities. And there's been such a kind of technological boom over the past 20 years that certain aspects of the profession need to catch up with it, and quickly.
It's like even a screen reader and things like that. Sometimes it can even help me. I don't have a visual impairment, but even having the words read back to me is helpful. A lot of this technology is useful.
Yeah, 100%.
We were having a discussion earlier today actually about court accessibility, and one of our members was saying how they got stuck in one of the toilets in Dundee Court because they put in fire doors and they were unable to open it from their wheelchair. So even just to that extent, how can you start to work in a workplace that's not working for you, that's not accessible for you? It comes down to things as simple as getting the right Wi-Fi, getting the right doors put in, making sure that there's ramps. It's those kind of basic adjustments that don't cost a lot of money that we need to work on.
I had this conversation with Inclusion Scotland about police stations. They were finding that a lot of people that were either attending for interview or, for instance, were working as social workers and had to go to a police station, that the police stations weren't accessible. A lot of them are in old buildings. So there's that difficulty that your workplace and the law might be accessible, but then the other organisations that you regularly have to visit, and Tom, you will have to, assume, visit police stations.
In my capacity as a lawyer, yeah. Yeah, but Yeah, I think you're spot on. But it's the public bodies, to be frank, and they've been so underfunded over the past 13 or so years that it might be a bit easier if you're working within the system, but if it's just ones you have to use, but especially I think Fraser mentioned the chap there, the wheelchair. I mean, it's obviously in court for an important reason, and that sounds absolutely horrendous, to be frank with you, that he was put in that position, and not a surprise.
Were these new facilities that just had been planned poorly, or were these old that had never been updated and adapted?
I think it was new facilities. It was a refurbishment that was done at the Dundee Sheriff Court, I believe. So I think that's the case. I'm not a court solicitor myself.
So in terms of something positive, what support is currently available for people that are wanting to become solicitors or aiming to practice?
So we've been working with a group called Disabled Students UK. They're a really fantastic organisation, and they're working on surveys to understand what students are currently struggling with. I think the information that they found, though, was that the students that they surveyed face an additional amount of pressure through the admin stress of having to continuously seek accessibility and reasonable adjustments in their studies. So they found that unfortunately respondents didn't feel like they were getting the support at present, which is why we've set up an education working group within Disabling Barriers Scotland to assist people from 5th and 6th year of high school right through their educational journey into the profession. We have a meeting coming up with Addleshaw Goddard about working on their access scheme with them. Hopefully it goes well and that comes to fruition. But we would like to be able to support people from their later stages of their high school education through university and into the career, because we realise that accessibility and inclusion starts at that early stage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think some of the universities are doing quite well in this. I spoke to, I think it was Rachel Wallace, who lectures at university, and I think there are disability officers, and there is a lot of support that can be given at university. So it'd be quite nice to see that, and during the transition period of university to diploma and then diploma to traineeship, to see that fluidity and make sure that there's some continuum there.
Sorry, definitely. I didn't want to paint a bleak picture of it. It's just that having gone through the additional admin challenges of seeking a learning support plan on top of sitting exams and studying, I understand how it can be tough for a student with a disability to seek that help. But yeah, you're totally spot on in terms of the disability officers being supportive when you do approach them, and we would hope that would be the case. And if a student struggles with the admin burden, hopefully there would be support that we could offer in terms of working with the universities to ease that pressure.
So to even get to the stage of utilising a disability officer, you would offer the support in terms to getting to that stage?
Yeah, absolutely. We're working with a student at the moment who was studying law, and she's part of Disabled Students UK. We're hoping to create a reasonable adjustments template letter to be able to send to disability officers, and hopefully that'll, if we offer a template, that'll ease a bit of the admin pressure that people are facing at the moment.
I understand. So it's all well and good having the disability officer, but if it's difficult to even access that in the first place, then that's not as good as it could be. So I understand.
Can I also make the point that I did go through the kind of red tape and the considerable kind of paperwork and assessment to get the help, and then even once I was accepted that I needed help, I still get marked down for dyslexia in my assignments, which was extremely problematic. And yeah, but Rachel's on one of our committees and she's brilliant, but it's the individuals, I think, do a lot of good. However, the overall structure and the overall kind of bureaucratic nature of the university, a lot of the students who need help get lost in amongst that.
So it's putting the onus on the disabled student, and that in itself is hard to navigate.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I was always told that, if you get help, what's the other students going to think? And I mean, I was confident, and still am. The other students couldn't care less about my situation. But it's just, I do think there will need to be a substantial change in attitude, to be frank with you, when it comes to students who seek and require help at university.
Yeah, so there's maybe that worry, most probably unfounded, that somehow you're getting an unfair disadvantage or something like that. Is that what the university were frightened of in that situation?
Yeah, I believe so. Well, that's what I was told. But as Fraser said, it's actually quite a lot of work to go through assessment and stuff like that, and to engage with the disability service. And and then you've got everything else going on at university, and then you've got law is an extremely taxing degree without all that, and to then get, because my assessments were marked down. I think all the stuff was kind of positive feedback, and then the only negative comments were spelling and grammar without any elaboration. And it turned out the markers were unaware of my disability, and then when I went and confronted them about that, they were apologetic, and then I was told it wasn't competent to remark them without further explanation, and then get a letter from the head of the university, or one of the, it might be deputy of the School of Law, saying I shouldn't have done the degree if I couldn't spell properly.
So if you didn't have your tenacity, you could have given up halfway through and said, "This is not for me."
It's more just fear of getting kicked out, to be honest. I probably started enjoying failing exams by some point, because I had so many of these sits that I must get something out of it, but it was a continuous process. I mean, my view isn't universal. Not everyone's got the same experience, but even without those co-experiences, the profession's been radically different in attitudes to disability in the university was, to be perfectly honest, much better.
I know, it's about that kind of cultural shift and change in attitude, that you're not an inconvenience, it's not a hassle, it's looking at something, let's make it accessible, because otherwise there's going to be a brain drain, otherwise there's going to be a massive deprivation of talent within the legal industry.
That's
very sad.
Sorry, Elizabeth, the report from Disabled Students UK arriving at Thriving that I was talking about earlier, that evidence is a bit of what Tom and I are speaking about, in the sense that I think it was 500 respondents stated that they didn't feel included in societies and clubs because they didn't have the adjustments in place to be able to accommodate them.
Mm-hmm.
So even out with the academic life, their inclusion in societies and clubs and the university life is being questioned, and is being made difficult for them, unfortunately. So
it's just incredibly sad to feel that you can't participate in full university life, because it's not just about hitting the books, it's about making friendships, it's about connections. A lot of connections are made at university, networking, and a lot of these things are done through things like hobbies and groups. And if you don't
this has taken a turn, hasn't it? This is the most depressed I've been with it being this sunny outside,
Well, we'll move on then.